Kevin McCarthy was never not going to meet with President Tsai Ing-wen, was he?
No, he was not. He was always going to exercise his right, as he sees it, to meet with Tsai Ing-wen here in the United States. And based on his comments, he still absolutely reserves the right to travel to Taiwan at some point in the future and meet her in Taiwan as well, or whomever the Taiwan people elect as president next January.
Now, given all of Beijing's rhetoric over this meeting, what retaliation are you expecting?
Who knows what's in the mind of Xi Jinping and the People's Liberation Army? I think the way I would answer that question is that the United States absolutely has a right to conduct a relationship with Taiwan, as does Taiwan with the United States. And any action that the Chinese take is their responsibility. It's not the responsibility of Washington, D.C. or Taipei to concern themselves with these matters. Both Taiwan and the U.S. should conduct their relationship as they have done over decades. And this perfectly falls in that line. Tsai has undertaken 7 transits through the United States. And I believe this is the 29th transit a Taiwan president has taken to the U.S. since 1994.
I'm curious because you're the president of the U.S. Taiwan Business Council, and on previous transits by Taiwanese presidents, Beijing has sanctioned companies that sell arms to Taiwan. Are you expecting anything similar this time?
We as a trade organization are not aware of actually any action being taken. So I would suggest to you that the primary goal of these announcements from Beijing is really for domestic political consumption in China, to transmit to the Chinese people that Beijing has some leverage in all of this when they really don't.
You say that Janet Yellen and Gina Raimondo have questioned the centrality of the U.S. Taiwan commercial relationship. Can you tell us why you think Taiwan is so key to the U.S.?
Absolutely. The concern emanating from Commerce and Treasury in respect to statements by their respective secretaries focuses in on Taiwan as a supposedly dangerous place for multinational companies to do business. This, of course, plays directly to the effort by the Chinese to place downward political and military pressure on the island and to discourage investment, to discourage countries and companies from engaging Taiwan economically, and then by extension weakening Taiwan, which makes it more vulnerable. While Janet Yellen and Secretary Raimondo aren't obviously cooperating or coordinating with Beijing, they are playing to Beijing's approach here. The stronger Taiwan is, the safer it is, and the more it can discourage, PRC adventurism, but also because the sunk costs from global multinationals in Taiwan are absolutely enormous, and companies do not want to stop doing business with Taiwan, particularly the semiconductor industry. Obviously, that's receiving a great deal of play, but there's a lot of activity in other areas, including AI, and leading multinationals want to not move away from Taiwan, but actually expand investment on the island. And we've actually seen that from leading companies like ASML in Holland and Google, among others.
So the trip by President Tsai Ing-wen to the US is coinciding with a trip by former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou to China. I want to dig into what messages these trips are sending.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I don't think it's a mistake that the two of them are traveling to China and the US at the same time. I believe that there is a significant piece of this which is about Taiwan domestic politics and the vision that the Pan-Blue Alliance under the Kuomintang and the DPP have for a future Taiwan government, which will be decided next January, as we touched on earlier. Ma looks as if, or appears as if, he's been making some progress in respect to framing and discussing with the Chinese how a KMT government might hit the ground running in re-energizing relations between Taiwan and China under a KMT government. And President Tsai has underscored the commitment that her government has made over the last 7+ years to U.S. Taiwan relations, and how important that has been to the success of her government, and also to the interests of the United States in the region, both commercial, military, and political.
You say the US should pay attention to who is running Taiwan. So could you outline what you believe are the differences between a DPP government and a KMT government?
Well, I think that there will be a significant shift, or a shift, of course, is that the KMT view a relationship with China in a more positive frame than the DPP does. And they believe that launching and engaging on that relationship will reap benefits to Taiwan's national security, and as a consequence, reduce tensions in the Taiwan Strait. And that may well be the case, at least in the short term anyway. During the Ma and Obama years, we had an accommodationist policy approach by both the US government and the Taiwan government. And certainly tensions appeared anyway for periods to have lessened during that period. However, it turned out to be a false positive, as the Chinese built islands in the South China Sea, militarized those islands after assuring the United States and others that they wouldn't do that. And of course, the rearmament of China's military and One Belt, One Road, other actions that have raised concerns about China's intentions, both within Asia as well as around the rest of the world. So with the KMT, I think we know a little bit less about what that China engagement would look like and what sort of disruption it would have on legacy U.S. Taiwan relations.
You also note during that period under the Ma Ying-jeou administration and Barack Obama in the US that arms sales to Taiwan were cut back significantly.
They were. We had a 4.5-year arms freeze from 2011 to 2015, in which the Obama administration refused to sell arms to Taiwan for fear that it would disrupt US-China relations. And of course, we continue to reap the consequences of that even today, as during that period, the PLA continued to accelerate its force modernization, and the military imbalance in the Taiwan Strait started to grow. It was a calamitous decision, and has actually worsened cross-strait tensions and has contributed to instability in the region.
Mark Milley, in an interview with Defense One, said that the rhetoric on war over Taiwan needs to be dialed down. What do you make of that?
General Milley is absolutely right. I think the way this story has played out actually has its roots back in last October and November, when we were continuing through all of last year and even further back to have these series of proclamations here in the US from senior officials, uniformed and civilian, about arbitrary dates in which Taiwan might be attacked. And it was creating a sort of circular firing squad here in the US, and really very unhelpful, candidly. Certainly no one wants to be cavalier about the threat from the PLA and from the Chinese Communist Party toward Taiwan and peace and security in Asia Pacific generally. But the rhetoric around these dates was very unhelpful. And clearly somebody in the Biden administration, possibly as high as the president himself, had a discussion and decided that these arbitrary dates had to stop, and that a more sober and calmer assessment and narrative was needed. And it's excellent to see General Milley frame that for us.